Hello guys, you're welcome to Lizama Stitches. My name is Amaka. So in this tutorial, we are going to be learning how to make corsets. So let's get started.
So I have my dartless basic bodice pattern here. So I'm going to briefly explain to you what I did here. Now this is my neckline. The neck width is 3 inches and the neck depth is 3 inches. And this is my shoulder line. I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. And this is my armhole. This is my armhole curve. So this is my chest point. Now let me label these lines. This is my chest point. This is my bust point. This is my under bust point. And this is my waist point. So I'm going to input my dart. For me to do that, I'll be working with my nipple to nipple measurement. Now my nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches. 8 divided by 2 gives you 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches here on this line and on this line. And I'll connect it. I'll connect it with a straight line. Now this is my bust point and this is my under bust point. Now I'm going to find the distance between my bust point and my under bust point. Now the distance between my bust point and my under bust point is 3 inches. Now for me to impute my bust radius, I'm going to be working with this measurement 3 inches. So I'm going to rotate this 3 inches. Now I'm going to rotate this 3 inches just like this. I'll rotate it. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to mark 3 inches. From this point, I'm going to mark 3 inches. That is from this point. So now this is my bust radius. Now the next thing I'm going to do, now on this point, on my chest point, I'm going to come down by ½ inch. Now on this point, this ½ inch mark that I gave here, I'm going to go in by ½ inch and I'll mark ½ inch. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to connect this point to this point with my curved ruler. Now on this point, I'm going to mark 1 inch. And I'm going to, now from this point, I'm going to come down by ½ inch. And I'll extend this point to this point. Our bust is fuller on this part. That's why I marked 1 inch here. But if the person's bust is small, you can either use 3/4 inch or ½ inch. But I used 1 inch. Now I'm going to connect this point to this point with my curved ruler, just like this. So now I'm going to extend this line. I want to impute my dart, but for me to do that, I'm going to extend this line. Let me extend this line a little. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to connect this point to this point with my curved ruler, just like this. And I'll connect this point to this point, just like this. Now, if you don't want your corset to be too revealing, you can go up by either ½ inch Or if you want it to come down, if you want to show a little bit of flesh, you can come down by half inch. But I'm maintaining this line. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm maintaining this line. I'm going to impute my dart. On my waist point, I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of this line. So I'm going to mark 1 inch here and 1 inch here. Now on this point, on my underbust point, I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of this line. So I'm going to mark 1 inch here and 1 inch here. Now, so I'm going to connect the points. I'm going to connect this point to this point with a straight line. And I'll connect this point to this point with a straight line. Now for this one, I'm going to connect this point to this point, just like this. Now because I don't want pointy edges, that's why I'm doing this, just like this. And I'll connect this point. Now on this point, I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of this line. I'll mark 1 inch here and 1 inch here. So I'll connect this point to this point and this point to this point with my curved ruler. So I'm going to take my horizontal measurement. Now the bust circumference I'm working with is 38 inches. 38 divided by 4 gives you 9.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 9.5 inches here. So this is 9.5 inches. Plus these 2 inches dart, which I'm going to cut off from here. I'm going to return it. So this is my 2 inches. 2 inches dart. Plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. This is my 1.5 inches seam allowance. So I'm going to take the same measurement here on the bust point. The bust measurement, the bust circumference is 38 inches. 38 divided by 4 gives you 9.5 inches. And this is 9.5. Plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. This is 1.5 inches seam allowance. Now on my underbust point, I'm going to take my underbust measurement on my underbust point. The underbust circumference I'm working with is 30 inches. 30 divided by 4 gives you 7.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 7.5 inches here. 7.5 inches. Now these 2 inches dart, which I'm going to cut off, I'm going to return it here. Plus 1.5 inches seam allowance puts you here. So on the waist point, I'm going to take the waist measurement on the waist point. Now the waist circumference I'm working with is 32 inches. 32 divided by 4 gives you 8 inches. So I'm going to mark 8 inches here. Plus these 2 inches dart, which I'm going to cut off, I'm going to return it here. Plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. So I'm going to connect these points. So now that's just it with the front panel. So I'm going to cut it. So now I'm going to label these. I'm going to label my pattern paper. You know, this corset can be confusing sometimes. If you don't label it, you get confused. So I'm going to label this. This is going to be 1, and this is 2. Now this one is going to be on fold. When I'm cutting this, I'm going to cut it on fold So let me write it down so that I won't forget. Now I'm going to cut one of these. I'm going to cut this unfold, and I'm going to cut two of these. I'm going to cut two of these, and I'll cut two of these. Now this one is going to be, this is going to be on my left hand side, and this is going to be on my right hand side, so that I don't get confused. Sorry guys. Now here I have 1 inch seam allowance here. I have 1 inch hemming allowance here. So I didn't know my camera wasn't on and I was talking, but thank God I saw it on time. I noticed it on time. So I'm removing this. I have 1 inch hemming allowance here. Now while cutting my fabric, I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance here, and on this one I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance all around it. On this one I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance all around it. On this one I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance here, here, and here. Now here I already have my seam allowance here. I have 1.5 inches seam allowance here, while I have 1 inch hemming allowance here. So let me cut the back. I'm going to keep this aside and work on the back panel. For the back panel, my neck width is 3 inches, the neck depth is 1 inch, and I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant, which I connected to the neckline. Now this is my armhole curve. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to impute my dart. For me to do that, I'll be working with my nipple to nipple measurement. Now the nipple to nipple measurement I'm working with is 8 inches. 8 divided by 2 gives you 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches here. 4 inches, and I'll mark 4 inches here. And I'll connect it. Now take note, every measurement I'm taking it from this line. Now this is my zipper allowance. This is my zipper allowance. So every measurement I'm taking it from this line. So the next thing I'm going to do, now this is my waist point. This is my waist point, and this is my chest point. From my chest point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. And on this point, I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of this line. So I'm going to mark ½ inch here and ½ inch here. So I'm going to connect this point to this point and this point to this point. Now to eliminate the zipper bulge, I'm going to mark 1 inch. I'm going to mark 1 inch here. One inch, and I'm going to connect this 1 inch to this point. And so I'm going to create a new zipper allowance. So from this point, I'm going to mark 1 inch. And I'm going to connect this point to this point. So I have a new zipper allowance. So right now, this part is no longer useful to me. So I have a new zipper allowance. This is my new zipper allowance. I'm going to take my horizontal measurement. The bust circumference I'm working with. Now the bust circumference I'm working with is 38 inches. 38 divided by 4 gives you 9.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 9.5 inches here. So this is my 9.5 inches plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. Now on the waist point, I'm going to take my waist measurement on the waist point. Now the waist circumference I'm working with is 32 inches. 32 divided by 4 gives you 8 inches. So I'm going to mark 8 inches here. Now 8 inches here. Now plus this 1 inch, for that. The 1 inch I'm going to cut off from here. I'm going to return it here. Now this 1 inch I'm going to remove from here. I'm going to return it here. This 1 inch I'm cutting off from here. I'm returning it here. Plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. So I'm going to connect it. I'm going to connect this point to this point. Now I'm going to, now 1 inch, I'm going to use 1 inch hemming allowance. And I'll connect it. You remember that on this point, I came down by ½ inch. On the front panel, I came down by ½ inch. So I'm going to repeat the same thing here. I'm going to come down by ½ inch. And I'll extend it. Now from this point, I'm going to come down by 2 inches. And I'll connect this point to this point. So I'm going to cut it. So I'm going to remove this dart. So this is the back panel. Now this is the back panel. Now this is my corset pattern. Now this is the front panel and this is the back panel. So with this, I'm going to cut my fabric. I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance here, here, and ½ inch seam allowance here and here, and I'll add here also, here. I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance all around this, all around this. Now on this part, now this is the back panel. I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance here and here. I'm going to add ½ inch seam allowance here and here. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to transfer this. I'm going to do it and show you the outcome. I'm going to use this to cut my fabric. I'm going to use it to cut the main fabric and the lining. So I'm going to do it and show you the outcome.
So we are going to continue this tutorial in our next video. So please like this video and also subscribe to my channel. Bye.